We are discussing the unified process. What do we mean by unified process? Why we are talking about unified process? First of all, the software has become complex, more and more complex, and they are updated fast. Software developers, they tend to use old methods around 25 years ago. Those methods that have been made still are being employed. And see, the development process is very diverse. For an embedded system or for a library management system, the process, they are diverse. So let us see the precursor. That means we want the user requirement to be converted or transformed into the software system. Here we have the diversity, that is the software development process, and the outcome is the unified process. So what does unified process actually do? It will provide us, or it provides us with the guidance to the order of teams' activities, integrates team works and individuals' work, and also specifies the artifacts, the documentation, and the other deliverables. It also offers the criteria for monitoring and measuring. Let us go back to the history first. In 1967, Ericsson's software engineering process, it was component based, it was based on divide and conquer paradigm, and there were certain traffic cases. Then came the Jacobson time, Ivar Jacobson objectory. The workflows he indicated were requirement analysis, design and code, and testing. And it was document driven. That is, we have the customized templates for each and everything. Then the rational came, the iterative development process. It was acquired objectory in 1995 and formed a ROP, that is a rational objectory process. This was a complementary approach, that is, it involved into RUP, Rational Unified Process, in 1998, and it covers the process model and the templates. Then in 1999, Jacobson published Unified Software Development Process. There are three key aspects for any process to be unified. It needs to be use case driven, it has to be architecture centric, and then it needs to be iterative and incremental. What do we mean when we say use case driven? It means that the development process proceeds through a series of workflows that derive from use cases. What do we mean by other words? Let us see certain terminologies in unified process. Users, someone or something that would interact with the system. Use case means interaction between the user and the system, that is, what is the system supposed to do for each user. Use case. And then use case model, collection of use cases, description of complete functionality. Initiate and bind, what do we mean by this? These are tools for specifying requirements, driving the design, and the source for testing. And the second thing, as we said, it should be three key points, where first is that it should be use case driven, then comes the architecture-centric. That means architecture is a view of whole design with key characteristics and without too many details. So only 5 to 10% use cases, the growth with use case in parallel, that is according to the structure and the function. The simplified process, we have a rough outline, that is use case independent. Then the subset of identified use cases around 5 to 10%, and more use cases are specified and more architectures are discovered. The use case and architecture, use case drives the system architecture, and system architecture will influence the use case. What do we mean when we say it should be iterative or incremental? The iteration means steps in the workflow. That is, you can say a mini project. Create a design for a relevant use case, then implement these components with components, and required iteration in logical order for economy. So the increments here is growth in the product, that is, it might not be additive. And the benefits to this controlled iteration is reduce the cost risk to the expenditure on a single increment, reduce the risk of delayed product delivery, find the risk earlier as possible, and speed up the tempo of the whole development effort. And this is easier to adapt to the requirement modification. Then the relationship of three concepts, that is the use case, the iteration, and the architecture. Use case will define the goal. Use case will drive the iteration and the architecture. The iteration will guide the architecture, and the architecture is going to influence the use case. The life cycle of unified process, each cycle concludes with a product release to customer, and each cycle consists of 4 phases: inception, elaboration, construction, and transition. IECT. The unified process, each cycle consists of 4 phases, or you say each iteration will consist of 4 phases: inception, elaboration, construction and transition. And phases which are within the cycle, if you say inception, elaboration, construction and transition, we have various disciplines also, like the business modeling, requirements analysis and design, implementation and test. So the cycle will end, the software product is released or releasable. Finished product includes requirements, the use cases, the non-functional requirements and the test cases. So at the end of the cycle, the software product will have requirements, use cases, non-functional requirements and test cases, and also the artifacts which are modeled by the UML. And for a new cycle, for every new cycle, we need use case model, analysis model, design model, implementation model, deployment model, test model, and representation of the architecture. What are the phases within the cycle? As we just saw, these are the phases within the cycle. And the phase 1 is inception. That is, we develop a good idea into vision of the end product, inception. Then the business case for the product is presented, and we establish the goals and build the business case and identify essential system requirement, and then initiate the risk management, that is with respect to the cost, the time, the political environment. The phase 2, that is the elaboration. Here architecture is expressed as a view of different models. That is, develop architecture, will capture functional requirements, and we identify the non-functional requirements also and plan how to construct, and continue with our risk management, which we started at the inception phase. Then the construction, that is muscle build, software added to the architecture, that is we build the system, maintain the architecture integrity, and architecture is stable but might have been changed, means it may have some minor changes. And of course in construction we have to adopt the iterative and incremental strategy. But is it sufficient to take early delivery? Yes, we want the early delivery. Then we come to transition. So product moves to beta release, that is we do trials, defect and deficiencies are reported, and then the reported deficiencies and defects are corrected and improvements are done, like final testing, system acceptance beta, and then training the customer personnel, documentation, installation and consultation, and the post-mortem review, that is we perform the post-mortem review. See how to model these disciplines of unified process. We have business modeling, that is we model the business context, the scope and the system. In the requirement, we engineer the requirements of the project. In the analysis and design, we evolve a robust architecture of the system. And with respect to the enterprise management, we encompass activities that are outside the scope of the single project. Now, rational unified process and unified process. So UP is a philosophy how to run development projects. RUP is the rational commercial product. Okay, rational unified product is the commercial output of the unified processes. Rational corporate introduction. Let us see the product it has for requirement analysis. It is Analyst Studio for visual modeling and development. It has Rational Suite Development Studio. For automated testing, it has Rational Suite Test Studio. For project management, it has Rational Unified Process, and for configurable process, it has RUP, Rational Unified Processes. The UML along with RUP, UML is the international standard for object-oriented modeling. RUP uses UML to prepare the blueprints of the software. How to build a use case diagram. That is, we are making inroads into many corporations today, and it's our goal to get there. So we don't think it would be an easy thing to make a unified process as a standard. And I think that everyone that looks at the unified process will become convinced this the way they have got to do it. What are the strengths of RUP? First is it is based on sound software engineering principle. The mechanism that provide management visibility into the development process and HTML based description of RUP is available. But weaknesses are also there. Only developing process, not the entire software. Okay, process, no, not the entire software process, only developing process. And this is not supporting multi-system infrastructure development efforts. And it is iterative nature foreign to experienced developers, who already have experience of the previous approaches. This is tool-driven approach that is not sufficient for a complex system which changes. So in conclusion, we have 6 best practices. The software deployment is iterative. The requirements are properly managed. The architecture is component based. The model of the software can be made visually. The quality control is there, and the configuration management is there. So RUP is component based. RUP uses visual modeling standard UML and rely on 3 aspects as we just saw. And it establishes a framework that integrates all different facets such as workflows, risk mitigation, and quality control. And developers can build different models. Thank you so much. This was a basic idea about the unified process and the practical viewpoint of a UP, that is RUP. Thank you.